At this point, we have a policy in transparent mode, which, as a reminder, that means nothing's going to be blocked right now. And it's very limited on what it's protecting at this time, meaning it might be kind of like that door alarm. And maybe that's suitable for the application in question. Or maybe we now need to start adding some additional security elements to the policy. And there's a lot of things we can add, all the way from here with the door alarm all the way over to there to that multi-level security. We can add little pieces along the way. We don't have to add everything. But one of the things that I always recommend, I mentioned this a little earlier, is file type enforcement. So we're going to talk about that. It's something hopefully you'll do in all of your policies. And then we'll also talk a little bit about our attack signatures that we have available. So file type enforcement. First, there's a couple ways that you can set this up. But this page is going to be important for you to get used to, this allowed file types page. This is something you'll probably visit quite a bit, especially if you do a lot of my exercises and demos. And right now, what you'll notice on this page is there is a list of allowed file types. It's that little asterisk. So what does that mean, that asterisk? So right now, the allowed file types list is everything. It's a wild card. That's a wild card. So all file types are allowed. What we're going to want to do is change this. And by the way, this is what your allowed file types page will look like right now if you went and looked at it in your environment. This is what we want to get to with our allowed file types list, is the list of file types that are needed for this website. Most web applications have a fairly small list of file types. Usually it's less than 10. That's one of the reasons why I think that adding file type enforcement is very valuable, is because it's a very easy amount of information to get about my web application. It's not that complicated to find all the file types needed. Also, as the web application continues to evolve, most web applications we're going to protect fall into one of two categories. The website was created and it's done. It's never going to change again. Or the website's created and next week they'll have some updates, and then the next week they'll have some more updates, and so forth. And it'll be a constantly evolving web application. So even in that environment, even in that scenario, the list of file types needed rarely changes. They might add new URLs, new fields, new forms, new images, but the file type list doesn't typically change very much. And the second reason why I think this is so valuable is it's a great payoff. The little bit of work it takes to get it, it's a great payoff for the type of protection it provides. It can block a lot of well-known past attacks, and it'll block some forceful browsing attacks like you just did in your last exercise. You guys were accessing the php.ini file type. That's not on here. So it would be a violation. So there's two ways to get this list. How do I get this list? There's two ways. One, and the two ways that you're going to get it fall into one of these scenarios. So let's say I come to the customer and I say, Danny, let's talk. I want to help you protect your web application. So if you can bring your web application team, the people who created this website, into the room, then we can sit down together and they can give me this list in 5 minutes, and then I can use that create button over there on the right, and we can create this list in just a matter of minutes. Easy. Or the other scenario is I come over and I say, Richard, can you bring your application team so that we can work on this application? And he says, well, that application was created a couple years ago and nobody really still works here that worked on that application, so we don't really have anybody here that knows much about it. So for that, we can't do it ourselves. We have to get some help from ASM. And ASM is going to help us figure out what this list should be. So the next few slides are going to refer to this second scenario, how to do it in the second scenario. The first scenario, you just use the create button, takes 2 minutes. But I have to have ASM find out these file types for me. Once I'm done, by the way, once I have my file type list, I want to make sure that I don't keep that wildcard entry in there forever. Because if I do, my wild type list will always be these specific ones plus anything else. So when I'm done, I'm going to end up removing that wildcard. Give me 1 second. I just have to remind myself what I do here. Ah, yes. Okay. I recently I added some triggers so that other people who taught this could remember. This is where I do a whiteboard. So we're going to discuss something that I think is a really valuable aspect of ASM. So most of the products that are in a security field, most security products, they have one of two different kinds of security. They have your negative security, where they can identify if a request is bad. They have ways to just look at a request and know if that request is a bad request. For example, virus software is typically looking at negative security. So when it comes to negative security, and let's say an antivirus program, how does a program identify if a request is bad? What does it use?
Signature or heuristic.
So typically it's signatures. Oops, we'll just say signatures. So we can have this list of signatures, and I can look at a request, and if it matches one of those signatures, then I know it's bad. We also have positive security. Things that I can identify that I know a request is valid. If I look at that request, I can look at something and say, ah, this is a good request. So for example, we can have our file type list. Also, we can call this our whitelist. This is my list of file types that I've identified that I know are good. And we have tons of different positive security elements we can add to a security policy, and we have several negative aspects, negative things we can use. And this is a valuable aspect about ASM because most products either use negative or positive security. ASM uses both. It needs to match something here, and it's good, and it will be allowed as long as it doesn't match something here. So later on today, we're going to expand this not just to file types. We have 4 different elements that we can create whitelists for. File types is just one. The other ones are URLs. So we can have a list of all the valid URLs. Again, a URL whitelist. All of the parameters. Parameter whitelist. Anybody know what the 4th one is? Okay. Anyone know what the 5th one is? You had them on Friday after lunch. Cookies, yeah. There we go. So we can, this is just a small sample of the things we can create positive security. And so file type checking is just the first example that we can do. Looks like my screen has gone out again. So as you go through the exercises today, and as you go through your demos later this week that you'll be doing, you're all going to be doing demos on ASM. And as you expand your knowledge of ASM past boot camp and you do more exercises and demos, you're going to learn about a lot more of these different elements of negative and positive security that we can apply, which again, we don't have to apply them all. We don't have to go all the way over to there. But each one gives us a little bit more security that makes the security policy more comprehensive. All right, so the first thing that we're going to have to do to create our file type enforcement is we have to tell ASM that I want to learn about file types. I want to learn about file types. We have to tell ASM. And we're going to use this page. This is a page you're probably, if you're going to become an ASM guru, you'll get to know this page very well, the learning and blocking settings page. A lot of what ASM, the policy, is going to do is configured on this page. So we're not going to go through everything on this page today. 3 top level things there. Remember, we have 2 different modes, transparent and blocking. This is where I switch from transparent to blocking. We also have 2 different learning modes. Actually, we have 3. We're going to cover that later today. At the end of the day, this is where I can change my learning mode. And then our learning speed. We're going to talk about that later today as well. And then down here, we have all these categories. And inside of each one of these categories are a variety of different violation types. So these are all violation types, all of which could identify a malicious request. Every violation type through this entire page can be used to identify a malicious request. So for each one of these, you'll see that there are 3 checkboxes. And if you went again and you looked at your learning and blocking settings page right now, and you opened up a lot of these categories, you'd see a lot of items already checked because we used rapid deployment. So it enabled some security for us. But it's important for you guys to understand what these 3 checkboxes actually mean. But before I do that, I want to actually go down a little bit further to the file type section. First off, the learn, new file types, you'll notice right now is set to never. So that means right now ASM is not learning about file types. We just need to change that from never. I recommend just using always. So for now, I'm not even going to have you worry about selective and compact. The idea is if you want a very comprehensive list of any of these items over there, URLs, parameters, if you want a comprehensive list, very specific list, I always recommend using always. So that's all that is actually needed to start learning. But in addition, I want to have some visibility about what's going on another page that we're going to look at in just a moment. So for that, I'm going to look at this violation right here, the illegal file type. So right now, my only file type on my list is that, the wildcard. So everything else right now is an illegal file type according to this policy because it's not on the list. So a PHP request is an illegal file type and so forth. So right now everything's an illegal file type. And I want to see every time a request comes in that is presently an illegal file type. I want to see it on a page, and actually you'll see the page up here at the top, right there. On that page we're going to look at next in just a couple slides. But I want to see every time a request comes in that is not currently on the file type page. And in order to do that, for the illegal file type, I want to have the learn checkbox. What that's going to do is on the traffic learning page up there at the top, we're now going to see every time a request is made for a file type that is not on our current file type whitelist. And I'm going to be able to use that to help me build my whitelist. Then later, we're going to have a locked down whitelist. What I mean by that is we have a whitelist with no more wildcard. We're going to get to a point where we remove this wildcard. But we're still in transparent mode. So nothing's going to be blocked. But I now can actually have a true violation without the wildcard. If I've got my list of 5 or 6 file types and somebody requests a .ini file type, that is going to trigger a true violation, but it's not going to be blocked because we're in transparent mode. But I do want to get a log entry. I want to get an illegal log entry in the log file you were looking at the end of your exercise. And that's going to happen when I have the alarm checkbox. And then eventually I'm going to move this policy to blocking mode. And now that I'm in blocking mode, I want to make sure that if somebody violates this type, illegal file type, if they violate it because they submitted .ini request, I want it to be blocked once I'm in blocking mode, and that will need the block checkbox. So that's what those three checkboxes are for tons of violation types. And we're going to come back to this later today. We'll review this over and over again. For now, I just want to get all three of those selected for the illegal file type violation. But you'll notice, if you kind of look closely, that the block checkboxes are grayed out. Anybody know why? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said earlier because you're in transparent mode.
Because we're in transparent mode, that's correct. Notice if I change this from transparent mode to blocking mode, these now become enabled. And so now I'm just going to select those three options there. So in truth, to start the learning process, I do two things. I change this to always, and then I enable these checkboxes. And then I will save this page. Oh, and I'll switch back to transparent mode first, and then I'll save the page. And then as soon as you save the page, you'll notice at the top, this is very much like APM was. Remember in APM you had to apply all the time to get the changes. ASM is very similar, and it'll even tell you, you need to apply this. So as soon as we apply that, we can now start to have ASM track what's been happening, what's taking place. So how can ASM start to identify what's taking place? How are we going to do that? How are we going to start identifying file types that people may request? We just need to start generating traffic. That's right. We just have to start generating traffic. Either myself, I can go sit at a workstation and start using the web application myself, or I can have a team of people that's doing it for me in some sort of a development lab, or I could just put it on the internet and just have users using it. And at this point now, every time a request comes in for the ASP and GIF, as long as those get valid responses, response codes from the web server, then those file types will be added to what is called the suggestion list. Very key to understand. This is a suggestion list. It's not the file type whitelist. It's just suggestions. And more requests come in for a PDF file. That's going to get added to the suggestion list. And this continues. And here's another request for the ASP file type. What's going to happen is ASM's not just going to track that an ASP file type was requested, but it was requested 50 times, 100 times, 5,000 times, 10,000 times. It keeps track of how many times this file type was requested. And we can also use that to our advantage. Because sometimes, and keeping in mind, we're on the internet, so we're still going to get attacked. We're still going to get people trying to get confidential files that you did in your last exercise that they're really not supposed to be accessing. But they're successful. So it's going to add that to the suggestion list. Again, these are just suggestions. Doesn't mean they're all actual valid file types. So we can use this tracking, this information to help us. When I see that, wow, there have been 10,000 requests for an ASP file type and only 18 for a CONF file type in the last 2 weeks, I don't think the CONF file type is probably being utilized by the website in its functionality. So how long will this process take place? It just depends upon the website, and it can be an ongoing process. We can go look at the results and then keep this going, and look at the results and keep this going. But the eventual goal is to now go examine this. So again, we can do this in production or development, but it's important to remember that we are in transparent mode, especially if we're in production. So that means we could still get attacked during this time. So now is where we get to come in and look at that other page, the second most utilized page probably, the traffic learning page. So it's right next to the learning and blocking settings page. the purpose of this page, so remember on the learning and blocking settings page, we had several violation types that all had a learn checkbox. All these violation types with a learn checkbox. This is now showing you every time a request has come in that has matched one of those violation types. So for example, we have an illegal file type for PHP. Now wait a minute. PHP is not an invalid file type. That's a valid file type for this application. But remember, we don't have anything on our whitelist yet. So as of right now, PHP actually is not a valid file type. So it's triggered the illegal file type violation. So what's nice here, we have a lot of visibility. This is all intended to help the administrator build that whitelist. So I can select any one of these, the file type, illegal file type for PHP. And over here on the right, I can see a lot of information. Actually, before I jump there. So here you can see how many times that file type was requested. Now, of course, in the lab environment, I haven't been doing this for a month. I just tried to submit a bunch of requests. But you can see that there's been 87 different requests for this file type, and it's tracked 4 different ones. So it does a sampling of this so that we can actually look and say, login.php. Now, what is that? Oh, okay. And I can see specific information about that particular request for the login.php. Everything, you can see the entire HTTP request. I mean, as much visibility as we can possibly get about the HTTP information. And this is all designed, like I said, so I can sit down with Richard and say, okay, your team isn't here, they're all gone, but let's sit together. Does this sound like an actual file type for the web application? There's a page called login.php. That sounds like a valid file type to me, and it probably should get added to the whitelist. There's my full request. So now it's time to start adding some of the correct file types to the whitelist. Now first off, you'll notice there's an illegal file type for no ext. What is that? So we looked at that earlier. Remember when we went to web pages like this, and we didn't actually, there was no page, there was no file type requested. So when ASM gets this request, it looks like that. People say, well, but wait, there's a default page on the web server. That's fine, but ASM doesn't know what the default page is, and ASM doesn't care what the default page is. ASM's not a web server. So to ASM, it just has no file type. The question is, do we want to add the no ext file type to our whitelist? To answer that question, you have to answer to yourself, do I want people to request my web page like that? Or do I want them to have to type /index.php enter every time they're going to go to my website? And I don't think that's what you would want. So in most cases, you are going to want to add the no ext file type. Now, one of the things that's really nice about this page, there's many nice things about this page, but you'll notice when I select an entry over here, any one of these violation types, when I select it, you'll see up here that it's going to tell you, you notice there's an accept suggestion button up there. Right below that, it's going to tell you exactly what's going to happen if you click on that button. In this case, it's going to add the no extension file type to our whitelist. So it makes it pretty darn easy to understand what's going to happen here. So I'm now going to click on that button. And there are 2 options here. There's accept suggestion and accept suggestion and enable staging. And for now, I'm going to have you not worry about that because we're going to actually focus more on that in our 4th lesson. So for now, we're just going to select that second option and leave it in staging.
Is there a way for us to export all these file types and maybe hand it over to the developers?
You can export a policy, but you can't export like parts of a policy. You can't just export the file type list or something like that. But you can export a policy, and they can import it into another BIG-IP.
Because what I'm getting at is, so I'm not going to be the apps guy, right? And we do this learning thing for 3 or 4 days, or whatever, because they've done their testing, and then I want to be able to say, hey, here's what we see. Which one of these types do you want to accept? What's the best way for me to get that information to you?
The way you just verbalize it to me, I'd probably do a screenshot. I'm not sure, or type it. But yeah, in terms of extracting what you're talking about in some sort of a report format, I don't think that's something I've seen before.
Okay.
There's another thing to be aware of. So like in modern web stacks, these are interpreted. So you'll see a file, right, file name. But a lot of the web security folks and search engine optimization people don't like using file names in their URLs. So that will be obscured away, so you may not have any of those. The other thing is if a developer is building something that gets compiled like a C#.NET app, they'll say, oh, I'm using CS files. You'll never see those on the server. So really the only way is to generate traffic and assess what you see going by and then enumerate what the traffic actually looks like. Because starting the other way, looking for any file type ever invented, for web stacks is going to be, just brute force and really hurry it. So generate the traffic if you can. You might have a website like WordPress. WordPress uses PHP. Do you ever see a .php file? Never do. Never.
It's true.
Because they use URL rewriting. So if you added all those for that application and you never see them, you would have added a bunch of stuff that's just going to cloud up your policy.
Yeah, the only way, yeah, I think to your point, the only thing ASM can protect is what goes through it. Whatever happens on the back-end server, ASM can't now involve in that. It's only what's actually going through ASM to the server that we can identify. So as soon as I've added no ext file type, you'll notice it's disappeared from this list because it's no longer illegal. It's now legal. It's now on the file type list, and it will also no longer ever appear here. We'll never again see the no ext file type on this page because it's no longer a suggestion. Now, that can be kind of a process because you may end up having hundreds of suggestions in this list, hundreds and hundreds of suggestions in this list. And so it can be challenging kind of picking through that list trying to find things. Well, we can make life a lot easier. We can filter down the suggestion list to just show us certain things. So for example, right now, I'm only looking at illegal file type violations, and I'm only looking at file type suggestions with a high learning score. I want to talk about this learning score just for a brief second, because we are going to talk about this learning score a lot more later on today and tomorrow. But remember earlier I was mentioning that I might get multiple requests for the ASP file type. I might get 10 here and 15 there and 25 more there and so forth. And ASM keeps track of how many requests have come through for this particular file type. So what ASM does is it's looking for the amount of requests for a specific thing, PHP file type. It's looking for the amount of requests for a PHP file type from multiple sources using multiple sessions across a period of time. And it's important to understand this because some people say, well, why can't I just sit there and request the .ini file type and just refresh, keep refreshing my browser? Because ASM doesn't calculate requests that way. It's looking for unique requests from multiple sessions, from multiple users using multiple IP addresses over a period of time. So if Richard's sitting here and just refreshing his php.ini request over and over again, it'll see the first one and it'll tick a suggestion, and then the rest of them are not going to register at all in terms of learning suggestions. The only way he could create a second learning suggestion for that is to wait about an hour, use a fresh browser, and request it again. And then it'll have a second suggestion from him. And he'd have to continue that, one request per hour, and most hackers are not doing that. They're not taking this, methodical approach about trying to, monkey with they don't even really know about this. So as these different requests are coming in from multiple sources, from multiple IP addresses, over time, ASM slowly increases this, which is called the learning score. So the higher that learning score, we know that the more requests have come in from more users, actual web application users, over a period of time. And I can feel a little bit more confident that if it's a higher score, it's probably a valid entry. It's probably a good entry, something I want to add to my positive security list. And we'll talk more about that much more later today, I think even tomorrow. So for now, you'll notice what I'm doing is I'm just filtering for illegal file types with a higher learning score. Now I can just see a short list there. PHP, CSS, PNG, JS, JPG, GIF, HTML, and PDF, they all sound good to me. I know for myself that those are all valid file types. So I can go ahead and select all of them at one time. I can see everything that's going to happen, all these file types that are going to get added, and then I can use that button to add them all at one time. Boom, done. Now I've changed my filter, and I'm now looking at illegal file types with a low learning score. So I'm seeing these things for ICO, INI, MD, TXT, INC. These are not file types that they all describe a file type inside my web application folder, but they're not file types users should be accessing. So I don't want them to be on my file type whitelist. So I can select all of these, and I can do one of two things. I can either delete all of these suggestions, or I can ignore all of these suggestions, and the result is very different. If you delete all of these suggestions, they'll go away from the suggestion list. But the next time somebody requests .ini file type, it's going to go back in the suggestion list. If you ignore all these suggestions, it'll remove them from the suggestion list, and these will never again appear in the suggestion list.
Is there a reset for that?
You mean if you deleted some, or if you ignored something and you want it, you can get it back, and you can do that via this filter option here. So you can find everything that you have ignored and then change its property in some way. I'd have to look at what I could change it to, but yes, you can retrieve it. So now I think I must be close to done with my file type list, because we've been running this for 3 weeks. These are all the file types we've seen so far. So I'm feeling pretty confident that this is my complete file type whitelist. Now, does that mean that we haven't missed something? No. Maybe there is something that we've missed and nobody's requested it in the last 3 weeks. It's possible. But for now, I'm feeling pretty confident. So I want to complete this process, which means I have to get rid of that wildcard character. I can select it, delete it down here at the bottom. Now, we have a fully baked whitelist for file types. As soon as I apply my policy, any request for a file type that is not in this list will be considered illegal. Will it be blocked or not? It's not going to be blocked because we're still in transparent mode. So it will generate an illegal log entry in my log file. And the nice thing about these illegal log entries is that's a way that I can examine my log file and I can see what's going to be blocked once I move to blocking mode. And that is how I might pick up and recognize another file type that we missed. So somebody might request another file type that is valid, and they won't get blocked, which is good, but I will be able to see that, and I can quickly go and add that file type just from that log entry. I can use that log entry to add that file type to the whitelist. ASM makes it very easy. Also, notice over here we have this staging column. Remember earlier I said, don't worry about staging right now. We're going to talk about it later. But all my file types right now are in staging because that was the selection I chose on that little button. Accept all file types and leave them in staging. We recommend that. But we'll talk about that more later today. So that's the first part of this lesson. That's file type enforcement. To review, it's very easy to do, very easy to set up. It rarely changes, so we don't have to continually update our security policy, and it adds a very good level of security. It's a good bang for the buck, I like to say. The second part of this lesson is just to talk a little bit about signatures, attack signatures. And the first part of that discussion is this concept of server technologies. So every website is a collection of server technologies. The web server type, the application server type, the web technology type, the database type. And if we want, we don't have to do this, but if we want, we can go to this page and we can start specifying the web server technology types. It's Apache Tomcat. And you'll notice what it's telling you is going to happen. This page is only here for one reason, and one reason only. What's going to happen is it's going to add some additional signatures to our policy specifically for Apache Tomcat. That's all it does. And I've also added Apache, Java, MySQL, PHP, Unix, Linux. So I've defined this web application specifically so that I have custom signatures for my negative security checking for this policy. So that's one way we can work with signatures. Another way we can work with signatures is on the learning and blocking settings page. Another thing we can do on this page. So we have our attack signatures section, and you'll notice that as soon as I just did the last step, I now see all of my server technology signatures here. We also have generic detection signatures. Ugh. Generic detection signatures. Those are added by default when we do things like rapid deployment. And there's about, I think around a little over 2,000 signatures by default that are added. I can even go one step farther. Over there on the bottom right, we have the change button. And I can now add additional categories of signatures. These are all called signature sets. So each one of these is a collection of different signatures commonly grouped together. In many cases, we might already have some of these signatures. So in other words, one signature might be in several categories. Now, why not just select them all and add them all to my policy?
Each signature, you're going to have to analyze every bit of traffic against, so it adds more load, presumably.
So there's really two reasons why not to do that. One is the more signatures we have, the more processing it takes, the more processing for ASM to do its job. So there's really no reason to have signatures that just don't apply. There is another reason. The more signatures I have, the more of a chance there might be for a false positive. Correct. So I don't want to just get crazy and start adding everything that I can add. I want to have very specific reasons. Now that's why we have the high accuracy, low accuracy, medium accuracy. High accuracy means less false positives. Low accuracy means more false positives, but more security. One of the questions I used to get a lot, and I still get it from time to time, and I'm going to challenge you guys with this, because I want you guys to answer this question. So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to ask you each to answer yes or no. So I'm looking for a yes or no answer here. Is ASM going to slow down my web application Yes or no? Richard, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes?
No.
No?
Yes.
Yes.
Technically, no.
No?
No.
Whoever said yes, you can leave now. Your job is done. No, that's a bad thing. Your job is done.
At least the last paycheck?
Because first off, anytime somebody asks you if one of our features is going to slow an application down, the answer is always no. Now, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I answer that question for two reasons. Number one is you're going to size them properly. So it's not going to slow down your application because we're going to put you on the right platform because you need A, really good customer satisfaction and really good performance, and you need really good security. So I'm going to get you on a platform so you're still going to have the top-notch security. But number two, let's think about this. These are requests that are malicious. We're assuming these are requests that are malicious. And without ASM, the back-end servers are going to have to do all the same stuff. So all we're doing is we're offloading what has to be done on the back end anyway. So we're going to do it at the front point. So technically, between us, does ASM slow things down? Everything we add adds a little bit more work. There's no doubt about that. But every piece of security you add in any environment, whether it's physical security or network security or application security, every bit of security you add is a little bit more work. If you've got 10 locks on your front door, it takes you a lot longer to get in your front door every night. Because that's the trade-off for all of your security. So yes, there's a little bit more processing power, but because we are now in the long run going to have less downtime because the servers aren't going to be offline, we're going to protect more attacks, we're taking more work off of the servers from doing this security, and we're sized properly, their application's still going to run fast. So it's kind of a trick question. But the truth is, if a customer asks, no, we're not going to slow down your application. But yeah, if they want to add every security feature, yeah, I mean, of course.
Especially BIG-IP.
So I might trick you guys with that later on this week, asking you something negative about our product. So always remember that.
I said technically no because the application is completely unaware of what it's doing. The application doesn't change.
Right.
Yes, because of
But the
traffic
full
goes
stack,
through it. Yeah.
from the user's perspective, it does.
You see, if I try to
But the
BS a customer,
salesman's answer is no, so this odd duality.
Well, I think we kind of get into the whole explanation, right? We're just changing where that process is happening, right? We're taking it off your servers, putting it on the application.
Correct.
And then we also have the ability to mitigate things a lot faster you would on the
Absolutely.
yeah, the full story is no. Are you looking at the F5 and does it do more processing? Yes.
Yeah, it's just like saying the security we're going to get that we're giving you is far outweighing the millisecond of additional processing that this one feature is going to add. And if we're concerned about it, we'll just get you one more blade or whatever the case may be. We're going to sell you more. So here, I'm just adding a few additional signature sets, and now I can see all of my signature sets we have here. So that's the second way we can work with signatures. We can add our server technologies. We can add additional signature sets. And then there's also, under application security, we can actually just look at the full signature list. Now, here's one of the tricky things about ASM. Very important that you guys recognize this. I would always also recommend you point this out to your customers. That every page we look at on ASM, it's for a specific policy. So remember, I might have 20 policies for 20 virtual servers. So each one of those policies might have different signature sets. So when I come to my application security attack signatures page, I may not be looking at the right policy. And if I start making a lot of changes, I might be changing the wrong policy. So it's always good to look up there and make sure you're looking at the right policy. But here, I can look at exactly how many signatures I've got. I've got 2,700 signatures for negative security checking. And these are all in staging as well. Again, don't worry about that for now. So this is a third way, is I can come here and I can look at all 2,800 attack signatures if that's something that, you enjoy looking at. And then finally, our updates, our attack signatures updates. So our ASM team is located in Tel Aviv. And these are brilliant application security minds over there. And we have a whole team over there that build, continue to work on our attack signatures. That's all they do. So they're constantly looking at the new threats, the evolving threats, threats that have changed. And so they are creating new attack signatures. They're modifying existing attack signatures. In some cases, they're even removing attack signatures, new bot signatures, you name it. They're just putting out new signatures, typically about every 6-ish weeks or so. We will always see a notification when there's new updates available. When we have zero-day threats, a lot of times we'll put a signature out quicker, especially if it's a big threat. We'll try to get something out really fast. And even at its simplest, we can also create custom signatures. So here is another possibility. And I have an exercise, I have a demo where you can show this. Where let's say Joe had just created that new attack string. He's over the weekend. So he's just launched a new worldwide application attack. And at best, we might get a new signature in 3 or 4 days. Well, maybe we might be able to identify something about that attack string. Something about the attack string, it's got, JP star something, I don't know. There's something in the attack string that we can recognize. Well, we can go create a custom signature and add it to our policy in minutes and start doing some blocking of that attack type. We can do that in one spot on the ASM and protect all of our applications that are behind it in just a matter of minutes. But then we're going to come here and do a basic update. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can do it manually or have ASM do it automatically. So what I'm showing here is the manual process. Click on a button, look to see if there's updates. There are. So I'll update it. Then it tells you everything that it did, all the signatures that were updated and added and deleted, bot signatures that were added and removed and so forth. And then over here I can get some other statistics about what just happened. And you can even click on View Details to see all these things that were done. Now, don't get bogged down at what all these mean. You never will know what all of these mean. And in most cases, you don't need to worry about what they all mean. If you wanted to change it to automatic updating, then we can do that up here at the top, where I change my mode from manual to automatic and how often it should check, ASM should check to see if there's updates available. And that's what I was just saying a few moments ago. This is actually information I just got recently in the last class, I think somebody asked, or no, one of my distributor trainers had asked this question, so I sent this to my ASM experts in Tel Aviv, and this is the words they gave, so I decided to put that on the slide. You guys have any questions? So far, is this making sense as we go foot in the water slowly?
Custom SIGs, you write them in the snort syntax?
You can write them in a simple mode, in an advanced mode, but you literally could put them in any, you could put actual syntax. I think you can, like I said, I know there's a simple mode and advanced mode. Beyond that, I haven't done a lot more than just the quick demo I put together. And I encourage, in fact, I think I might have one of you do that demo next week or this week, so you can show everybody. What I love about this demo exercise that we do later on in the week is you're all going to be doing an ASM demo of a feature that we don't cover in class. So when you guys deliver your demos later this week, you're actually all going to be teaching each other another new ASM feature. So by the time we're done with that, you're going to learn 6 new things about ASM that we don't get to cover today or tomorrow. All right, so you're going to take your policy and you're going to add the file type enforcement. You're going to do everything we just covered. You're going to enable learning. You're going to generate some traffic suggestions for both good and bad traffic. You're going to look at the learning score, I believe. I think I have you look at the learning score and make some thoughts about that. Add some file types to the list. bake your list, make sure it's complete, and then see what violations do to the log file and so forth. So it's 11 o'clock, it's 40 minutes, so we're doing good for time. So I'm going to suggest we take lunch right after you're done, because we'll be done by 11:45. Let's take lunch till about, I'm going to give you a full hour for lunch today. So let's take until 12:45.